So, Gimo,
Dan.
I played an episode for my stepmom the other day, the episode 5, the Chinese medicine one,
Uh-huh.
and I realized that our intro was just way too long.
Yeah, it was way too long. I agree.
So, even though I'm sure everybody finds this so charming and wants to hang out with us, for
Yeah,
hours,
but
I think we
I'm
need to
not
get
yet
down to
that
the point.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. Is this, are we in the intro already or
we're in the intro. We're
okay,
yeah,
we already, okay, wait, fuck it, that's good. It's
yeah.
it's Audrey. She's
Oh,
amazing.
yeah.
We,
What did we talk to Audrey about?
well, Audrey is an amazing craniosacral therapist, right?
I see her regularly. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I've seen her only once, but I intend to do more. And it was super beneficial, and I'm very passionate about this kind of practices. It's very much in line with practices I've studied and enjoyed in the past, and uh, and also it connects very well with the work we do at the school.
Right.
It connects very well with the idea of a connected a connected body and with ideas of listening and um, pinging, which is this term I think we discussed in the podcast, and yes, and mind body connection and plenty more. So it was a brilliant conversation we had in a little garden.
Yeah, I quite loved it. Um, the two words that really stood out to me were attention and acceptance, and applying those to a very high degree, the amount of healing we can do for ourselves, and also if we're a practitioner, craniosacral or shiatsu like you do, that those things can be incredibly helpful for the body to shift.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Phrasing, beautiful introduction we did.
Great. Okay. So, Audrey, what is craniosacral bodywork? Interoception, attention. We get into it. Enjoy the episode. I'm Dan Etmacher.
I'm Gimo and Dan.
This is
Alchemy on the Island.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Alchemy. On the island. Would you like to join us on the show in the world on alchemy?
So, you've never been on a podcast?
No.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
You've never been on a podcast?
No.
Where have you been living? Oh my god, I've been on so many podcasts.
Really?
Yeah, these guys that I did.
Oh, right.
just
That's
the ones
true.
we recorded.
No, actually,
Right.
mind you, I've been on another couple of podcasts.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
talking important stuff. All right.
So, we've got the lovely Audrey here at the
Yes.
house today.
Hello.
Thank you for joining.
Happy to be here.
So, what are we talking about, Gimo? Do you know?
Yes, I do.
Do you know?
What's
Yes,
the topic?
I do know the topic.
Oh, good. That's great.
So, we. So since you're great, and we thought
Thank you.
we needed to get a bit of that greatness in our podcast, and to channel it in the subject of. Well, one thing that you're an expert of is craniosacral therapies.
Yes.
And that is a practice. Oh my! I fucking remember what
Oh,
the
you
topic
could-
is. I got it.
yeah,
There you
right,
go.
there
Got
it
there.
is.
Got
Motherfucker,
there.
I got you there.
Perfect.
So yeah,
Oh, I thought I was
craniosacral
gonna fry
therapy. So craniosacral therapy is a technique, and you'll tell us a little more about it, please.
Sure.
But as far as I understand, as we understand, I would say it has a lot to do with the quality of listening or tuning in with the patient, the person, the receiver,
The tissues.
their tissues, the inner parts of the bodies, and working with that. Like it's somehow a very, I would say, use the word yin practice, a very passive in a way practice, right? And I think this is a quality that can very easily be connected to the practices that we are studying here in Bali.
Definitely.
That have a lot to do. I mean, they have young aspects like really crazy circus like stuff, but like they also have a real connection with the yin side of and so we will talk about that. That's
Perfect.
basically mind in the body,
Yeah.
listening quality,
Internal
what
body
does it mean,
awareness.
internal body awareness, all of these things. What do they mean in your practice and in our own shared practice and in any other thing you feel relevant?
Yeah.
Right? Was that correct?
seems
Is
about
that-
right.
is that what we were talking about? Yeah, good.
That's my understanding.
Aha, I know it. Right. But first things first, as
Yeah.
Dan always says.
Eat
Ah.
a hamburger before Wednesday.
Nice, nice, which is today, we failed. No, Dan always says,
my tagline?
please tell us a little bit more about yourself, who you are, how you came to the practices that we do, how you came to the practice that you do, and how you came to end up in Bali, and whatever else you feel is relevant for us to know.
Okay.
Because people want to know about the real Audrey.
real
Okay, the
Yeah.
real Audrey.
Yes.
Well, let's see.
We start very basic. Like where?
Yeah,
how old
where
you
does
are
one
ish?
begin?
Where do
Should I
you
start
come
with
from?
childhood? You know, okay. Well, I was born in Southern California,
Okay.
and sort of my general education led me to naturopathic medicine
Mm-hmm.
after college. I had a pre-med degree in biochemistry and cell biology, so it seemed like the natural progression.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I was just like, is there any school out there that sounds like Hogwarts? Because that's really where I would like to actually go and study magic. And so naturopathic medicine seemed to
This is
encompass
Harry
that
Potter
for me.
shit, right?
Yeah, Harry Potter shit,
okay.
basically. I
That was
wanted
a
to
generational gap here.
I'm sorry.
I know, I feel happy I got it. Like I got
Yeah,
it.
no, you got it.
Hogwarts
You
is
got
the
it,
school
totally. I wanted to
in
go to
Harry Potter.
Hogwarts.
Okay.
Which is more similar to what we're actually currently doing, I feel
Well,
like.
it was a perfect segue,
Exactly.
right? So I learned like herbal medicine and homeopathy and anatomy and the body and
in a really
just-
grounded way.
in a
like
really
that's-
grounded way. Like we
it's a big
literally
deal.
had cadaver lab and
Yeah.
cutting up a body, you know. and-
Abracadabra.
yeah, it was disgusting, but informative. And so while I was in school, I also did a dual degree program with acupuncture at that time and met a teacher who was teaching craniosacral therapy.
Right.
You
And
were
so
learning a lot.
I was learning a lot. I did it all at once. 4.5 years, that was all I was doing.
Wow.
And so in that process, I did a couple workshops with him, my teacher, and he was, I mean, it was hugely influential. And then he actually recommended Damo's first book to me. So this was over
Wow.
10 years ago. I
So
was
a
like 24
craniosacral
years
teacher.
old. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So he was like, you need to check this guy's workout. It was his very first book. That was the only one that was out at the
The
time.
one that Damo doesn't like anymore.
Exactly.
That one,
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one. That book. So he said, it was like, you got to check this guy's workout. I started to read it, started to practice it, but I was just doing so many other things
Yeah.
at the time too that I
Practicing from a
didn't.
book is
Yeah, I didn't follow up on it, but it was a seed.
Early seed.
It was an early seed that was
Alright.
planted. 24
Cool.
years old while I was learning craniosacral from that teacher. And so, you know, graduate, fast forward, I moved to Asheville. I get into all of the, you know, just basically like a jack of all trades kind of seeker at that point too. Like I didn't take practicing in the business side of setting up and doing the medicine thing particularly seriously. You know, it was sort of like my side gig to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Even though I had all
Full-time
these
seeker,
degrees.
part-time naturopath.
Exactly. So I was, you know, experimenting a lot in a sort of spiritual hippie community outside of school because
Asheville sounds perfect for that.
it was perfect for that. Plus, you know, I'd been in school till I was 28 years old. So I was like, I need to let loose a little bit, learn about life, experience some things. So through that, I met Mark Garner, a fellow Nagong student, and he brought back Damo into my life.
Yeah.
And was like, you gotta study with this guy. He's the real deal sorcerer, blah, blah, blah. Which he won't like to hear that he's being called a sorcerer. But, you know.
Mark was using the words that would resonate with you.
Exactly.
Right.
He was
Mark's a smart
appealing
guy. Smart
to
man.
my
He's the real Harry Potter. I
Exactly.
think Damo would love to be called that. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna
too
say
good.
Audrey thinks of you that you're the real
He's
Harry
the
Potter.
real Harry Potter. No, he's Gandalf, really. No, which is a different movie altogether. But
It's a book.
yeah, that's true. A book originally, yes. Yeah, so Mark brought that back up to me, and I was like, I know exactly who you're talking about.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and
You already read the first book?
well,
Part of it.
part of it. I didn't read the whole thing, to be honest. And so it took about 5 years, I think, of Mark talking about it until I actually
wow. Didn't
got
know.
to a workshop. Yeah.
Okay.
It was always on my agenda. I always planned to. I had even signed up for one in 2021, but you know, it was COVID and I was living in Hawaii and I was like, I'm not gonna.
Wow.
Just stay in Hawaii.
Hawaii.
Yeah, I was like, I'm just gonna stay in Hawaii. I'm not
Smart.
gonna travel and have to do the thing up the nose and whatever. Like,
it's pleasant.
just screw it. So
Yeah, like
I
cocaine, not a good
yeah, so I canceled and didn't go until finally summer of last year. I went to my first workshop in Maryland and just basically had my mind blown by the experience.
So not that long ago, you did your very first.
I'm very new.
super
Yeah,
new.
that was my very first workshop. And I already knew what I was seeking. I was seeking this like greater connection with the divine, you know, a better afterlife, a better next life, and sort of what does that mean? Does that mean I organize my energy body in a certain way? Certain things like that. And
Very spiritual aims, you could call them.
Absolutely.
This is
Yeah.
a big topic. You just opened like a massive
Yeah,
thing
I
that
know.
we
Like
should
maybe the
explore.
podcast topic changes now, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Like who knows?
we can definitely explore this because
Right.
I mean, yeah.
And so I actually spoke those things to Damo at dinner when we had like a group dinner. And then the whole workshop, he basically outlined the pathway of how that is achievable.
Like a practical.
A practical,
Step-by-step.
methodical, like a process to get there. Like,
Right.
and I was blown away. I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Did he make it sound like quite easy? Because that's a thing that sometimes he does.
It
like,
did,
He makes it sound
yeah.
like,
I used to do A, B, C, D.
He did, yeah. It sounded achievable in a 10 to 15 year time frame, which he
Right.
was very clear on. Like, yeah, it might take you 10 to 15 years to get there, but
Yeah.
you could do it. you
Yeah,
know?
What else are you going to spend your time doing?
Right. So I was like, oh
Worthwhile.
my God, I have to do this. Plus, I had a moment when I was in that training hall too, where I had dreamed that I had already been there. You know, when you have those like dream
Okay.
recall moments, not exactly deja vu, it's a slightly different thing
Right.
where you're like, I dreamt this scene. So like
Yep.
that to me spoke of like a higher communication that like I was headed in the right direction.
Why do you say not a deja vu? What would you say?
It's dream javu.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a dream. It's
right,
a dream
right.
deja vu.
They're,
But you-
they're distinctly different.
yeah, no,
in
I
my
understand. I
experience.
understand how they're
Yeah.
different. But what do you mean? How? What does this difference entail? I mean, like, what's the meaning of the difference? If you see what I mean.
Right.
The difference because one is a dream and one is a thing that already happened, like in not
Right,
in a dream state.
right.
But do you think that they mean different things?
I'm not sure. I think.
Just curious.
Yeah, to me, I think they're both coming from the same place, like potentially from the higher self or the soul communicating like that you're in the right place at the right time.
Right.
And that this is already something that was supposed to be happening in this moment in time, and you're
Right.
aligned with that timeline.
Yeah, it's a type of synchronicity.
Yeah, it's a
Carl
type
Jung
of,
would
exactly.
say.
It's a type of synchronicity that doesn't rely as much on external signs,
Right.
so to speak. A deja vu, yes, is more externally, but like the dream recall specifically is very much my own inner experience speaking to me.
Okay.
So that felt to me like, okay, no other entity can fuck with my synchronicity because this is totally my own.
Okay.
So it's like, you know, where sometimes you follow synchronicity and it leads you down the wrong path because it was sort of like a tricksy something that wants to mess you up, because that exists too. Like, let's be real.
Right.
So not all synchronicities are leading you in the right direction. So that's a whole nother conversation to have
It
too.
is.
But
Wow.
like,
More bookmarks
You're
for
in,
Gimo.
I'm totally like you're blowing my mind. With this. I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, and I'm liking it. Like, I want to know more about trixies.
that'll be the next podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so you know, I asked if I could come to Bali, and the answer was yes. And then I immediately, a month later, showed up in August, and I've been here ever since.
Hit the ground running.
Hit the ground running, just
Yeah.
do it all in full time.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I've been practicing for I think 5 years before I came out here,
Okay.
and I was like, "Cool, this is a lot for me."
Yeah. I mean, it is a lot. I'm not gonna lie.
And you'd done one workshop, you're like, "Fuck yeah!"
Yeah, doing it all.
Which is
Yeah.
awesome. Awesome. Yeah.
Did you leave Hawaii for Bali?
No, I had already left Hawaii at
All
that
right.
point and moved back to the mainland of the
Okay,
United
okay,
States.
okay.
Yeah.
So, I was
It's like,
curious.
it's like Bali, but cleaner. Hawaii.
It is much cleaner. The air is pristine.
It's lovely.
It's lovely there.
Cool. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing a little bit of your
Yeah,
journey and how you got here.
long-winded,
No,
but here
that was
I
perfect.
am. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Absolutely perfect. Yeah. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about your background as a craniosacral
Okay.
practitioner
Yes.
and some of the tools that you've honed in that practice.
Yes.
And how they might be relating to the practices that we're doing out here,
Okay.
where they're helping you, where they're not. I'd be interested in that relationship.
Okay. Awesome. So, as I speak, do bring me back to topic with interjected questions in case I
Yes.
tangent.
That's our job.
Perfect.
So don't worry about
Perfect. Okay, so craniosacral therapy, for those that don't know, is basically you're working with the tissues in a very specific way. So you're working with the hydraulic system of the spine, the cranium, the skull, and the sacrum, and the tissues within that pump. So there is a pump in that with the cerebral spinal fluid.
It's like a rhythm, right?
It has its completely own rhythm, yeah. So it's distinctly different from the heartbeat as well as the respiratory system.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, they even call that rhythm the rhythm of the soul, which is, obviously cool. So it's 9 to 11 beats per minute. So it's very slow. It's very undulating. It's very oceanic in that way, which, is the primordial soup, so to speak, too. And like the spine, the embryo, when it's developing, like the spine is the first thing to develop as well.
Yeah.
And you think about that, working with that system, everything touches the nervous system in that sense. So
Yeah.
if you can regulate the nervous system flow, you can regulate the organs, the tissues, everything.
Which is not that different from some Chinese medicine.
Totally, exactly. And in that case, then you're also working with the bones in a sense that they become a fulcrum point with which then you stretch the fascia of the body through to help it realign itself.
So this is a separate part of the practice.
Exactly. It's all encompassed. But yeah, so it's like you're working with the spine, you're working with the hydraulic system, you're working with the skull. But when you're actually applying the technique of your hands on body, there are specific hand postures that you use on the body to like create like a pull point. Like I would stick my thumb somewhere where there's like a little outcropping of a bone, and that's usually where fascial and tendon insertion points happen with muscles and things like that. So it becomes like the fulcrum with which then you pull and readjust, which then travels through the entire fascial system and network as a whole because it's a connected system. It's like the meta communication system of the body that touches every single cell, every single organ, every single muscle, everything.
Crazy big thing fascia in the last like 20
Exactly,
years. Talk of town for 20 years.
Totally.
Fascia, like,
So it's like the mycelial network, basically.
Right.
In its own. It's actually a very good comparison. I like that one.
Yeah.
So you're working with that system.
So working with that system, so another like the important piece that makes craniosacral different than like chiropractic, for example, which they're also working with the spine, the bones, and adjusting things. So this is obviously soft tissue oriented, and I'm not adjusting with force. Instead, there is like I listen to the intelligence of the body. So there is a belief and a trust that the body knows how to heal itself, and it's tuning in with that. So it's like if you think about it, when you get sick, and I mean your body heals itself, right? Like you might use herbs, you might help it along, but like you're not sitting there being like, okay, like knit back together or whatever.
Perhaps you clean the wound, but
Exactly.
the body repairs it.
Exactly. So it's working with that system very much. So like the innate intelligence of the body knowing how to realign itself, how to unwind through trauma, unwind through injuries. Like it knows how to put itself back together if the right conditions are in place.
You give a little invitation.
Exactly.
A little suggestion.
Exactly.
Look, body, you could do this.
Right. Like listen, like
Or
I
not,
know
or
like
not.
you know what to do. It's almost like talking to a child. It's like you can do it. Like I trust you, and you're just like hold space, and then they do it. So it's very much like
Share
that.
the money I'm being paid.
Yeah.
Treatment with you if you fix yourself.
Yeah.
deal.
So it's like, you use like sort of modern psychology, hippie language or something, but like it really is very much holding space
Right.
in its own right.
Energetically,
physically, it's literally like you create like an energy sandwich with your hands on the body. So it's like if you're creating a sandwich with your hands, your palms, which we use in practice, are lao gongs, right? Like you're literally, they're communicating through the tissues of the body to each other,
Right.
which then creates like an electrical current between the two. And that is enough force, that energy current between your palms, to stimulate the tissues to start moving and functioning and realigning in the way that they need to.
Quite big, like under the, what do you call it, the lumbar spine and on the belly, right? Like it's quite classic thing. Like
Yeah.
very enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely.
enjoyable.
So it's like, so through creating a current between your hands, which as we know again are like these power points of their own, it's like that energy current has information, creates a spark and a catalyst to create change. And and through the action of listening and paying attention, again, I'm not creating the change myself, but by paying attention, the electrons, the protons, the tissues themselves start to reorganize into a more harmonic
Right.
state, which is, supported by physics as well too. Just the fact that the act of observation, of paying attention, changes states between particles and waves. So
Yeah.
it's like that alone, it's like attention is enough to create change.
Amazing, completely difficult to understand reality, right? Like
Totally.
This thing that I look at something,
Well,
it
it's
changes
quantum.
from parts. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So this thing they drilled into us so much that we say, yeah, sure, of course, it's like that. But like
Right,
then you think
right.
about it, you say,
What does that mean?
wow, how,
Right.
wow.
Right.
And you don't know, but actually it is. It works, and we have so many proofs of that. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
So I have an assumption. My assumption is that you've honed this
Yes.
skill of attention
Right.
over many
10
years.
years.
10
Yeah, at
years.
least.
And
Yeah.
that perhaps that has served you
Yes.
coming into this practice and starting this journey in such a big way so suddenly, and kind of like
Absolutely.
keeping your head above water and actually managing to absorb the practices and take
Yeah.
them in and grow with them.
Yeah, definitely. I would say there's quite a beautiful overlap between the two. Like when the more Neigong I started to do, the more I was like, oh, I've already been getting my mind into my body in this way. Because like not only would I work with patients and clients and stuff, but I would use those same techniques to help myself heal.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I had like a joint out or if I had a headache or something or tight muscles, like I would apply that same touch technique and listening to my own body regularly to readjust as I needed to. So I was like, even though I didn't have a Dantian or practice Qi, that was still happening. So that applied to Neigong. I was like, wow, I've already been doing this. This
Yeah.
is like so similar.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm actually doing it or not. I could be completely delusional, but there is a correlation that has been rather fascinating and I think has helped me quite a bit.
Yeah.
Realistically speaking, I think that if you train the skill of attention and passive listening with no intention, and you practice it for 10 years,
Yeah.
and then you come to a practice such as Neigong and all of this, where attention and non-intentions are qualities that you have to develop and that you have to practice, you have an advantage already. Like you already work them. I mean, like, of course there might be slight differences in the way you apply them or
Of
something,
course.
but like the quality is already strong in there.
And we just have to add in some acceptance when we're looking
Right.
within.
Yes, the acceptance piece, indeed. Yeah, totally.
That's a tricky one.
Right, because it's different too when you're working with someone
else.
versus with yourself.
So
I
share a little bit.
accepted your body's shit.
Yeah.
like,
Right,
like-
totally. No problem, because I'm helping you. I'm happy to help. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
accept you. Like,
Easy.
it's so easy to be
Easy
come
peasy.
from that healer place and really be loving and caring towards others. But yeah, once you go inside on your own and you're in there and you're like, oh God. I mean, it's
Ooh,
peaceful
boy.
because it's like, oh, thank God my mind is shut up for a second. But also then you're like, ooh. Yeah.
Not sure I like everything.
Totally.
Yeah.
There's some things I certainly have not accepted yet.
But I think, I mean, from my experience from shiatsu and similar practices that have like much in common to what you described, I think, as a practice, there is this thing that you want to keep an overall desire to improve the quality of life of the patient, like to improve their health, their state.
Yeah.
But this
Like
is
a background.
It's a background, and it's before. Like when
Yeah.
you're in the practice, you really have to accept what there is. Like
Yeah.
you have to say, okay, the body has its own intelligence. It will do what it has to do,
Right.
and I just have to be here. Like, and if I really insist that I want to try and help with a specific ailment or specific thing, I will lose the wholeness of the situation. I
Yes.
will lose the ability to actually adjust my technique or my listening in order to capture something else. And you have to do that, and you have to be flexible and malleable and responsive to that without having any desire of achievement.
Absolutely.
And that is a form of acceptance that you have to have with your body when you go inside inner practices. You have to be there and you say, yeah, looks like my spleen is burning as usual, and it sucks. Yeah, that's what it is. And you
Yeah.
have to kind of just look at it. Let's see how it burns. And you have to have
Okay.
a laugh, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's tricky.
It's definitely tricky. I mean, I definitely have noticed too in times where, like working with clients or something, where if I felt like I was like, I had a whole list of things for them to do, right? You should do this, you should do this, all of these things would be so great. And then, obviously they don't go and do them at all.
Or maybe they do one.
Maybe they do one, maybe they do nothing. But then there have been times too where I've been like, and then that didn't work usually.
Right.
But in a situation where all I did was hold space,
Right.
where I just listened, where my quality of attention was particularly high, that I could even feel a change in the sort of field
Yeah.
that was
Right.
created between it, that was when the most significant shifts for them
Right.
would happen.
That's where the change happens.
And some sort of healing crisis or healing event would actually happen. And I was like, oh God, okay, well, screw the supplements. Like, let's just do that instead.
Can you talk a little bit about the healing crisis? Because that's a super concept that you just mentioned. And I think again it relates to our practice as well.
Oh, it definitely does. It definitely does. And it's hard to remember when you're going through it.
Yeah.
So that's an important piece
Yeah.
to it as well, is that, so a healing crisis, from how I was taught the definition, is that on the journey towards more wholeness, more wellness, that you will have these moments of crisis that are kind of built into the process, where things get a little bit worse before they get better.
Right.
And that you can have a return of old symptoms that show up. And usually in reverse order too. Like the most recent will show up first, and then you slowly get
You go
deeper
back.
and deeper, or you go deeper into the past of those things. And usually they should resolve pretty quickly
Yeah.
if you're accurately reading the return of symptoms versus like, here's a new
A new thing,
pathology.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what a healing crisis is, and it definitely happens quite a bit on this journey.
Yes. Like
Yeah.
old
Things will
shit
arise.
comes out. Yeah.
We're poking the bear. We're stirring the pot.
Yes, regularly, as well as having our teacher help us with that.
Yeah. Oh,
Adding juice.
yes, to the poking.
Yes.
So Demo talks about like two foundational skills of mind,
Yeah.
which is what we were talking about, which is acceptance and
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah.
And I don't think these two things can be stressed enough.
Yeah.
And I think most people maybe don't fully comprehend what they are or like their power.
Yeah.
Because you could do all this work that we're doing out here, and
Yeah.
if your attention is poor,
Yeah.
and you have little acceptance, it won't actually do that much.
Yeah.
I mean, certain things will happen. Maybe you can build a dantian, get a little bit of energy moving, but I think it really like severely limits how far you can take practice, how far you can master craniosacral,
Right.
right? Like they just seem so foundational.
Yeah. They are. Yeah.
So I'm always wondering, like, how do we teach these skills to people? How do we explain them?
Right.
You know, that's something on my mind, like, because I'm a psychotherapist,
Yeah.
and helping people learn
Yeah.
some of these skills, certainly through modeling,
Right.
is one way.
Right. Well, I guess, okay, so in craniosacral specifically,
Yeah.
since that's what we were talking about too, it's like how I was taught first is to listen with my hands.
Okay.
So it's a whole different experience to listen with your hands. So imagining that your hands have like earlobes
Uh-huh.
or something where
Yeah.
the laugongs are.
Yeah.
Right?
Center of the palm.
Yeah, center of the
Are
palm
we talking
isn't.
visualization here?
Oh God, no. That was
no,
just.
I thought for a
that was
second I
just
thought.
to help non-cultivators understand maybe.
Oh,
Wait a second for the chopper to go.
momentary break.
That's unusual for Bali.
Like
It happens over here.
A couple
Okay.
of times.
We're on like a route.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah, so imagining, but not imagining.
Exactly.
Just
You know,
taking your ear,
This
ripping
is-
it off, and
yeah,
putting it
just
into
putting
your
your
palm.
ear on your palm. So listening with your hands, it's different, right? It's like, who listens with their hands? I mean, obviously, that happens all the time when we don't even think about it because it's built into the system, that our sense of touch is how we listen to our environment, how we listen to textures and things like that. It's its own system built in. So actually, it's not that weird to listen with your hands. So
there's a lot of nerve endings there too.
So many nerve endings, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you imagine, again, we're making that like energy sandwich between our palms on the body, and then you listen with your hands.
Just listen.
Exactly. So it's like you kind of place your yi, or your attention, in between your hands. So it's like if I were to soak my mind into like everything that's in between my hands, where having an anatomy background is really helpful for this too. Especially when you start in the beginning, you're like, okay, so you can kind of break it down. Like between my hands, here my hand is over the solar plexus and on their spine at the back too, and I'm creating a sandwich of their torso between my palms. And then you kind of break down. It's like, okay, so I'm going through skin, I'm going through muscle, then there's a nerve plexus here, the aorta is here, there's some pancreas, a little bit of stomach, then there's the spine. You kind of break it down, and you can kind of create like a 3D map. And then as that map starts to dissolve slowly, but then you start listening, you can start then like listening at the same time, the pulsations and beats of the organs, of the blood pumping, of the tissues moving. And then as that starts to happen, then it's like, then movement starts to happen and your hands just follow. So again, it's like, so that was how I was taught first.
Sounds like there's like a passive element.
Yeah.
Right? They use the word listening. They don't use the word like
They use
even
the word listening.
Watching is not a word
No.
that's used like in meditation so much. It's really they use the sense of the ears.
Yeah.
It's this much more passive
Right.
sense, it seems.
Right, totally. Yeah, because
So
it's
you're getting
like,
out of the way.
it's incoming information. Yeah, so exactly, you're getting out of the way. So I just practicing that over and over and over again started to then just like really develop and fine tune the ability of my hands to sense like micron level changes in electrical conduction, basically, in the tissues. And then again, it's like being able to transmit a little bit just from my own current emission of my hands on a normal level. Like that would then stimulate the tissues to move. So it's like then you just start to sort of like listen. It's like, okay, it's starting to move. Things are shifting, moving
Do you kind
around.
of move with it?
You move with it. Exactly. You move with it. You let the body guide you. And then it unfolds and unwinds in that way. So again, it's very much a holding space and a support system.
Yeah.
And the receiver normally perceives this as generally like some form of heat on the body, a little bit of not heat, like warmth, right? Like something nice, maybe a little bit of a current, and then the movement. And generally there is this feeling of I don't know if you moved me or I was moving you. Like there's this kind of strange situations because like the rational brain is not really capable of it's not generally meant or designed for interpreting the signals that are given by the brain inside the rest of the body.
Yes.
If that's a thing. So the intelligence of the rest of the body, the rest of the body perceives things, has a consciousness, understands, decides, moves, and generally does this without communicating it to the verbal, rational part of the brain. But in this kind of process, this connection starts being established, and at first is a little confusing. Like you don't know how to interpret it, and that's similar to what we have when, for example, Damo tells us like the way we work with our tissues, with our muscles, like it's really tiring for us, but we don't have a perception of it often because we are used to have a connection between our rational brain and our exterior muscles, like the long muscles of the body. And so when we train them in a thing like a bodybuilding or whatever other external thing, we can gauge. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. We can gauge like the level of involvement they have, how tired we get and stuff. But when it comes to the internal tissues, the interstitial tissues and all of that, like they generally do their own thing without communicating to the brain, like the rational part. So when we activate those, like we get tired, maybe we get even a little bit of discomfort in them and all of that, but we don't know that it's happening. Like it's like, and all of a sudden, boom, we fall on the floor.
Exhausted.
Totally exhausted while we're just standing or even sitting and not doing much. Right? From the outside, it doesn't look like you're doing much, and all of a sudden, like you want to eat an entire cow and go to sleep for 3 days.
Right.
Right. Like,
Well, because also at the same time, we're also merging our yi,
right.
our mind energy, with that energy of the tissues. So it's
Right.
like there's two sources of like are draining into the one experience at the same
Right.
time. So it's like
True.
even taking that as well. Because if you think about how much brain power, even just if you were, you know, using only that all day long, like
Right.
that's exhausting in itself.
Yeah.
You know, and how much
Mm-hmm.
like calories you need to just support your brain. So you
Right.
know,
True,
we
true.
throw that in there too.
So we're eating steak like twice a day right now.
Yeah,
Like-
lots of steak.
Yeah, I
lots
think
of
we,
steak.
we will have to do an episode, and we'll have to choose like an unfortunate guest that will have to discuss with us the ethical questions of our practice. Like
Oh, goodness.
the level of, like, you know, like the amount of animals we are
Consuming.
consuming and other things that are I think there is a bunch of ethical questions that I think are really important, and we'll get someone who will be in a big crisis.
The balance between ethics and health.
Yeah,
an
ethics,
interesting-
well, not just health, ethics and higher goals.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Ethics and
Yeah.
spirituality, because it's health for spirituality somehow. I don't know, like so.
Right. And like
It's
the
gonna be
karma of
a tricky one. You're lucky
Yeah.
that you get to talk to about craniosacral.
yeah, I'll just bypass the the karmic animal eating thing,
Exactly.
Totally.
even though I participate.
So I'm curious about like how this skill of attention, how it's translating currently, if like into your practice, because we're talking about you've added, I'm guessing, quite a bit of chi since your 10 years of practice as craniosacral.
Yeah.
So you've added a bunch of chi to your system. You've refocused more on yourself versus clients in terms of practicing, and then you're applying this skill of attention. Like, how does that all come together? Like, what are you noticing when that gets applied to those factors?
Yeah.
Because it's different than just applying regular attention when you
Right.
add chi to the system.
Of course. It amplifies it.
Yeah.
I would think, and I would have experienced. I'd say it makes the attention louder, which is, I guess, another way of saying amplifies it. And
Some more obvious.
yeah, so just to reiterate the point, the amplification of it just makes, like the tissues then just move. Like instead of, it's not so subtle
Yeah.
anymore.
It's much more obvious.
Exactly. So whereas before, some people would have pretty wild reactions on the table before coming to this practice, for sure, depending on the person. Like I would say I knew what Zifagong was before experiencing it here, but I would have called it somato-emotional release.
Sure.
In that
Some form of spontaneous release.
Exactly.
I would have called it katsugen, the Japanese name.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, see, exactly.
Love it.
But now the fact that I have a deeper ability to absorb my attention into my own tissues, then that translates to in a client relationship as well, then that I can focus my attention more in that situation as well and have more movement in the tissue on that body as well too. So that's the main thing I've noticed so far, is just the magnitude and amplification.
Yeah. So the chi sort of superpowers.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
attention.
Yeah, has really made that connection with the fascia specifically, I would say. Although I know that definition is up for debate.
Could be the interstitial tissue system.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of new research on the fascia that I would say could really support its case for that's what we're working with.
Yeah. We call it the Huang.
Exactly. Yeah.
Especially the presence in all of the cells. That's
Yeah.
one thing. The intelligence of the fascia is
Yeah.
another thing. Like, it has very, very specific and complex intelligence. Like
Complex and
that.
absolutely,
Let's
and the way
geek
that
out-
it's
let's
made.
geek out on the fascia. Let's do
Yeah, well, it's okay. So this is a little bit of geekiness. It is a collagen triple helix.
Okay.
Is one of the main components that it's made out of, which that protein in itself has semiconductive as well as quantum conductive properties. They have been discovering, especially with the fact that it's lined with structured water.
Okay.
So those two together create basically the capacity to quantum tunnel and create energy flow of information that's you can superimpose and happen spontaneously across the entire body, faster than the speed of sound, and all of that stuff.
Well, that makes a good case for that is what we're filling with chi.
Exactly.
That sounds like a chi superhighway.
It is. Absolutely. And just the fact that, like, so in that case as well, then the yi, when you apply attention, which as we know from physics, attention itself can change particle versus waveforms, which is what basically what quantum field,
Yeah.
mechanics is. So if we apply attention to a protein compound that is quantum capable, then we are literally allowing the fascia of our body to respond immediately, simultaneously, and as a whole connected system to our yi, which is what we're doing
There you
when
go.
we're creating lines and power lines in our practices and things like that, why it responds, why we're working so hard to connect the wetsuit up as a whole, and why we get messed up when we have restrictions, adhesions, issues with the fascia too. If it's not hydrated properly, if it's like clotted in certain places, then it's not going to be able to transmit or communicate properly.
Right. And we're talking about fascia. We're not just talking about the muscle sheath that people see when they're like cutting a chicken breast up, right?
Right.
It goes between the organs and through the body. It's this very complex
And into
web.
the center of a single cell itself.
Yeah.
And how that cell is made, and the trillions of cells as well.
So the total
It's
interconnected
everything.
web.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so when Damo will call it the snot,
Is he called the snot?
he said
I've heard
he said
I've
it's
heard
not.
the spongy wetsuit.
It's the wetsuit. He's also said the like snotty
also.
stuff. Yeah, he
Yes,
like
yeah.
just like to tune into the snotty stuff. So it's like that, a more specific way to say that is that they actually do define it these days with is called viscoelastic, which is viscous plus elasticity.
Yeah.
So if you think of those
Right.
two definitions together, so viscous is like water,
Yeah.
right? Like a liquid in which when you squish it or try to form it into something, it displaces in a very specific way.
The
And-
creamy water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then elasticity, it stretches and then it rebounds.
Yeah.
So it holds a kinetic potential that that doesn't actually take energy from the system, but can hold that potential
Yep.
and then spontaneously release it immediately. Which is when we train, we're tuning into the springs.
Right.
Which if you can tune into the springs, you could go all day doing squats, right? Like
Right.
you're not actually burning energy.
Well,
So you're
as
turning into the
much.
kinetic potential
Exactly.
of your fascial lines.
Exactly. Because of its very specific property of being viscoelastic.
it is a very specific quality of snot.
Yes.
that you have
Yes,
like,
it's this-
it's
yeah.
not every day. It's not
It's not every day.
Yes, Dan. Yes, it's not every day.
Right. Which is amazing. So you put those things together, and the fact that it can also, this is another component, okay, since we are geeking out on fascia is also piezoelectric. So piezoelectric is a property that crystals have, right? So when you apply mechanical stress to a crystal, it emits energy,
Yep.
right? Like a quartz powering a watch, for example. So if you apply pressure or any kind of deforming energy to our own body system, to the fascia, pressure, whatever, it will emit energy.
Yeah.
So if you think about that too, again, even coming back to attention, if we're applying attention, which has its own ability, energy to create
Focus
the
of energy,
change, particle versus wave, that whole thing, attention then is enough to deform the fascia, send a wave of information throughout the entire body and create change. Like, so when we do the yi, like release it, in like Xingyi or something, it's like that's also how that all kind of mechanically works.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Very cool.
And I mean, this is like newer research coming
Sure.
out, right? And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like all of this, it just makes so much sense, like in our practice as well
Yes.
as what we're working with. It's like, oh, this is how it's working. Wow.
And I'm convinced
cool.
that a lot of what we do, certainly not all of it, but a lot of it is very physical
Yeah.
in nature, and that because it's interacting with the physical tissues of the body,
Yeah.
that perhaps science can offer some of these types of explanations.
Right.
Eventually,
Right.
maybe it can't reach. I don't think our practice is reducible.
Right.
Potentially,
Right.
but there are aspects
Totally.
that I think
Yeah,
can be
so-
touched.
I think the reason why Demo doesn't use the word fascia is not so much that it is not convinced that this is what it is. It's just he just knows that fascia is still very much debated, and a lot of people have
It's not a
different
settled
definition. It's not a
Right.
settled
thing.
so he says like, why do we have to go into a confusing ground where some people might think it's that kind of fascia and some other people might think it's that other kind of
Right,
fascia?
Yeah.
right.
Let's use a specific word for the case, snot.
Right.
Or
Yeah, let's
spongy
just
wetsuit.
call it. Yeah, let's call it snot. Yeah, that's great.
Which at least you know that it's not actually it's not, and you're starting from that and you say, okay, it's something different, and you don't define it in a very Taoist fashion. You don't
Right,
get like the specific
yes.
definition, so you can be
Good point.
malleable with it and change it according to the situation. I think that's the only reason, but I think that he would probably agree that like according to this definition of fascia, it's definitely major overlapping, if not complete overlapping of the
Right,
concepts,
right.
Because it sounds
It
like
sounds
it's
exactly like
yeah.
what my experience is.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's like the qualities of this type of tissue. In
So we have to
bodies.
activate it, right?
Yeah.
I think, of course, it's always functioning to some degree, but we increase its functioning, its activation, through our ability to get out of our sort of normal musculature
Right.
movement and
Right.
tension, and get the mind into the body to absorb into this tissue system through attention and some
Right.
acceptance.
Well, and it seems too that the further you progress along the path through different practices that we're doing, like the sinking and the pung and filling and all these things, it's like part of it is to build and thicken
Yeah.
the fascia, right? And or Huang,
The Huang.
and so that we have more and more and more of it.
Yes.
So that we have more and more and more of these different capacities and
That it's
capabilities. More chi.
strongly connected.
Yeah.
It's more open, that you take away what you were saying, like the adhesions and the blockages and all of that, that you open up the body so that the fascia is freer
Totally.
to move around and stuff. And oddly enough, you after a little bit, you start feeling it, like you really feel like these tissues that move, and you
Right.
can use them probably. I mean, like, I was told recently that my body, unsurprisingly, is not yet open enough, and that I have to work more
More
on
to
the
do.
opening, right? But Amos said, like, don't do you can do, of course, the stretchings and all of that's always helpful, but do more of the work in which you're just opening the tissues. And so I spend mornings like half an hour in front of the mirror in the morning, not moving and starting to sweat after 2 minutes like a maniac, just having the ribs being open from inside and the shoulders being open by, and I feel like all these tissues that squish around and push through the ribs. It's a bit disgusting if I think about it, and push in the hips and all of that, and push sideways and backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
And I could not do it before. Like
Right.
before, I had like much more limited potential of this. Like now, instead, I can really have more strength, and it's all like you do it in different ways, right? Like you can do it like by pulling the external muscles so that they open a bit and then letting the tissues move around. You can do it by putting your mind in the tissues and telling move, and the tissues move, or you can just put your mind in the tissues and after a little bit you can do just release, relax, and then the tissues will just spread. So you have these different ways,
Different
of
mechanisms.
different mechanisms,
Yeah.
but ultimately you have like this pressure that is built by stuff that is not muscles. It's not.
Yeah.
It's quite strange,
Right.
and you have more access to it than before.
Right.
And all of this, like, I think it works. We were talking a lot about the intention and attention, which are like two main topics, right? Like in what we do, and intention is frowned upon and attention is liked very much. Although we
We use a little intention.
We do. We do.
The
In certain
intention is
practices,
normal.
yeah.
It's normal also, like at the beginning of a process, like it's more intention based, right? We do that
Right.
thing which in Taoist terms is wei wu wei. So governing, non-governing, right? Like, so first you build a pathway, you build like a
With some intention.
through intention you build something. You build like a route, or you build like
A line to the body?
a process or something, a line through the body, and then you just let go of that intention and you're filled with attention, and at that stage, like, the route is that line is filled massively, because like you've opened it with your intention, then you let go and the process is much stronger, which is quite
Right.
crazy, because you think like, I'm going to increase the intention and the process is going to get stronger. Instead, no, once you've done the line, you let go of the intention and you just put attention, and then the process
Yeah.
unfolds. nicely, cleanly, in the right way and stuff. It's
Well, it's kind of like neuroplasticity and then crystals at the same time.
Great.
So it's like,
Let's bring it back to that.
yeah, well, no.
I love it. I love it. That's
Well,
cool.
you know how if you want to rewire your brain in a certain way, you have to sort of have a certain amount of repetition and a rerouting of a groove that may have been there before, but you want to create a new groove.
Yeah.
So that's where the intention piece comes in. It's like, okay, we have to build a new highway.
We're going this way.
Yeah, we have to go this way instead. So we have to do it enough times to where that highway is then built. So that's like how you would say, like in neuroplasticity, you're reprogramming the system. And then crystals technically can also be programmed. So like they're used in electronics, right? In computers and things like that because they can store information. So the fascia has that plasticity, and it's also as if a liquid crystal at the same time. So here we are, we're like, and we have to first build the lines, tell it what to do,
Giving it a little nudge.
make it go the way we want it to go until that is built, and then which is programming that crystal liquid with information. And then once it's programmed, now it's just like feeding the baby. You know, it's like,
The attention.
yeah, with the attention, because it wants attention just like a little one does, you know. It's just like, oh, like see me, which is again, it's like even in physics, it's like the act of observation is
Powerful.
is powerful, exactly, and is the healing force, is to be seen is so much of what just like life and existence is really like craving almost.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me the foundation of good parenting.
Totally. Yeah.
As a therapist, I'm always teaching people how to reparent wounded parts of themselves.
Yeah.
I received some impeccable parenting, so I got this kind of interesting download of what really pure, loving acceptance and attention feels like to receive. I can't always apply it to myself,
Right, of course.
but I know at least I have that imprint, and I know what
Yeah.
it's like, and I try to transmit that in my practice to clients to try to help them understand what is it like to give yourself or someone else that level of attention. And that's something that I think like anybody can do if they want to like supercharge their yoga practice or their meditation practice or whatever they might be doing.
the life,
Their life practice.
whatever aspect you
Yeah.
pick up of life.
To
like,
improve the
Right.
attention
yeah.
is an incredible undertaking.
Yeah.
And there's so many layers.
So many layers.
And it's so subtle.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I when I sit down, especially to practice meditation, that's always an intention I bring to my sitting practice, and then I kind of release it, but it's there, kind of
Yeah.
running in the background. Like, how can I keep letting go of these subtle ways in which maybe I want this practice to do something,
Yeah.
or I wish this part about this was different, or I wish I was different in this way, just to release all those intentions more and more and more and more, so you can actually listen.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like there's like multiple avenues with which to tap into that quality. So it's like, okay, so I don't really understand what attention is or listening or anything. So it's like, okay, well, what are other things that I can maybe work on cultivating that might help me access that?
Yeah, great.
So something I would say is sort of sidelines that quality is just like appreciation. So like sort of just having like the art of appreciation, so to speak. So, you know, you're going about and you're just like noticing your environment, or like appreciating the taste of the food you're having, or appreciating how beautiful that flower over there is. And then sort of slowly it starts to become a sense of awareness and a sense of paying attention, but just like from a different avenue that
Right.
then can then reapply in that situation. But you had a different access point and you cultivated it in
Right.
a little bit of a different way that might work better for you
Totally.
than something else.
It's a nice little trick.
Yeah, exactly. There's like tons of little tricks like that, you know? Yeah. Appreciation is one I like because that also translates then into just like enjoying your life a little bit more.
Right.
Which is always good.
Definitely.
The little things, you know.
Yeah, there is a number of qualities, right? Like that
Yeah.
can shape your mind in a way
Yes.
that then it's easier to be attentive or something. Like, I mean, like curiosity or
Perfect. Yes, curiosity.
Then of course, like at some stage, they're like you have to use them for a while. Then you have to let them go as well, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
want to be too curious because ultimately there is an intention in that. There is like
Yeah.
I want more. There is,
Right.
I want to even appreciate it somehow. At some stage, probably is it probably holds some form of attachment to it, so you have to get it. But like this is high-minded,
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
cool.
so
Use-
small.
use
you
what
know,
you
just
can use, like,
access
at
point.
first.
Very helpful training wheels.
Yeah, exactly.
training
exactly,
wheels, training
exactly,
wheels.
Very, very
Right,
useful.
Yeah.
It's great.
Cool.
And it's funny because like rationally, or like you can easily see how these things are useful and how much your practice would benefit from them. And you think, okay, I'm gonna be appreciative next time I'm sitting. And then actually when you're sitting, like again, if you try to force being appreciative, it's not gonna work. Like after 3 minutes, you're just still gonna be complaining about your spleen again. Like it's you really have to train these things elsewhere.
Right.
And then you have to sit, and these things, like if you train them enough, then they've shaped your mind, like they're built into your mind, like you would have like a stronger muscle in your mind. The muscle of appreciation is a little stronger, and it will work on its own. It's like you will not have to say, I'm going to be appreciated. You're just going to be
because,
appreciated.
Exactly.
That level, I think, of intention or force in practice is not so helpful.
No,
You want it to be inbuilt.
exactly.
Right.
Talking about.
Which is where outside of practice, like you were just saying, like cultivating some of these different shapes of the mind, qualities of interacting with our life are extremely helpful.
So, sounds like the takeaway from today is that the fascia is really cool.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Or the
Super
Huang,
cool.
or whatever we're calling it.
Yeah, the
There's-
wetsuit.
There's a wetsuit in there that you
The
can
snotty
access
wetsuit.
through attention,
Yes.
through opening and stretching, mind.
It's a
And
shame
body.
that fascism is a bad
It's,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's so
we
It's got a
close.
bad connotation
we're
because
not-
like we would really like to use it now as a good word. Unfortunately,
But,
in my country,
not
my
so
own country,
much.
they fucked it up.
Yeah.
It's a shame. It's a shame. We cannot be fascists.
No fascists here. No.
we can be fascial enthusiasts, but not
Fascials.
Fascial.
But that
Facials?
sounds like
That's too
fa-
close to facials.
Yeah, that's very difficult. Like fascia is possibly not the best word. Like, we should come up with a new word.
We
Huang.
should come.
We're
Yeah.
Huangists.
Let's just
The Huang.
stick with
Snot.
It's the Chinese word.
snotty wetsuits.
Right.
Perfect.
Beautiful. Anything else before we wrap up today?
I probably have a lot, but will come after we wrap up.
Ah.
as,
I know,
as
right?
usual, right?
Totally.
Like,
Like, oh, I should have said that, and I wanted to bring this up. And
But this is another way of saying you'll be back. You'll be
Great.
back on
Excellent.
the podcast.
Until
Yeah.
next time.
Yeah, next season.
And I highly recommend a craniosacral session with Audrey if
Oh,
you're
yeah.
ever,
Yes.
if you're ever in
So
town.
Thank you.
So do
They're
I. So do I.
fantastic.
Anything you want to disclose, propose, advertise? Propose? No, it's not the right word. Advertise, public. I don't know. You get what I mean? Like, are you?
You have an audience.
Right? Yeah. Are you writing an encyclopedia of the fascia? Are you?
Yeah, is there a future
Yeah.
book that you're going to pub?
Are
I-
you
I
trying to-
have
an
so
antagonist
many-
podcast, something like that?
There's been so many books I have thought to write,
All right. Okay. Sure. All right, whatever.
but I have
Me too,
not
man.
written any of them. Maybe one day I will.
Yeah.
And I'll
You-
let you know at that point.
Yeah.
For
We'll
now.
make sure to promote us in Finland.
Yeah.
To promote it in Finland. We're big.
But yeah, for now, here I'm just practicing here and in person, and I am working on a website in the background where I do hope to be offering some educational material through
Cool.
and
Around
So-
what?
well, just the things we've been talking about.
Perfect.
Sort of like craniosacral on and through an online platform. I can teach people how to apply it to themselves for their own self-healing.
Self-craniosacral.
Exactly. Self-craniosacral is like something
Cool.
I actually feel pretty passionate about because I've just seen its power. And again, I'm adjusting my own body. So it's like if you don't have access to a practitioner,
Sure.
you're out and you need that. So that is coming soon-ish.
Nice.
We'll let our listeners know.
Yeah, let
I-
everyone know that's coming soon. And yeah, again, there's some educational content and some like written material, ebook style stuff on different topics that,
Well, it seems like you got a lot to
Yeah.
share.
yeah.
So-
But is
Yeah.
it difficult
Let's see
for
it.
you to produce all this here? Because I'm finding like my
It
creativity is
Energy levels.
Yeah,
energy
I'm
levels
so
are low,
consumed by the
yeah.
training here that I have given so little time to those other things. I really only do it on break.
Yeah.
We're about to have 3 months.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
It's a good
they're all,
chunk.
and I do plan on doing some of those things over break.
Yeah.
So
Because it's not just like energy levels for me, at least. Like it's
Mhm.
really like the energy is directed elsewhere. I mean, like it's
Yeah, it's just not flowing in that direction.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
the creativity is
Right.
really weak. Like
yeah,
aside from this great podcast that we are actually struggling a lot.
We
to
needed
keep up
some
with.
sort of outlet.
A pinch of outlet is in the podcast, but like
Right.
a lot of it like is not there. Like
Yeah.
the things
No,
that
I
I
agree.
usually do, like I don't
Yeah.
do here so much. I'm
Same.
really focused on this.
Totally. Yeah. So.
Thank goodness, otherwise I'd be the butt of a lot of more pranks. So
Are you saying that all my creativity is actually
prank related.
Prankster.
pranks are a big part of it also.
Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you
so-
guys.
Lovely having
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was
Thank you so
fun.
much. Thank you, Dan.
Okay.
Until next time.